Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, THI publisher Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here for the 5th edition of our Tape Talk series. This is the first one that we're focusing on the defensive side of the ball, and as you can tell by the title, this one will be on the defensive line. But before we dive into that, gotta blast a promo that we've got going on over at TarHeelIllustrated.com right now. You've probably heard it in some other podcasts we've done, but sign up before April 25th and you don't pay until August 1st. And even regardless, it's only $8.33 a month when this promo isn't going on. So not super expensive for all the content and all the stuff we get. AJ, I'm going to give the assist to you real quick to kind of dive in a little bit deeper, but the access that you get, point to the passer, but the access you get to the premium boards is really valuable, which you can kind of explain a little bit.
Yeah, we don't tweet out a lot of goodies. We keep that for the people who subscribe and keep this ship afloat. So you go to our boards. You've seen how we've handled the coaching stuff, or recent coaching stuff about UNC, the basketball stuff, and also the Walker Kessler, Justin McCoy, Jonas Adu, the other targets you're going after. And a lot of our articles are premium as well. David Sis has been crushing it with pieces on the targets that Roy Williams offered and getting their take on Hubert Davis and learning about the communication, the really interesting stuff in the Jaden Bradley piece that his father had to say. So you're only going to get that if you're a subscriber to our site. Right now, you don't have to pay anything.
Yeah, no.
So you don't have to pay until August. So hop on and get on board now, because we got a lot of stuff, and you can only get most of those goodies right now if you're a premium subscriber. And we do not tweet that stuff. So if you go to Twitter and think, hey, they're going to be first to put it on Twitter, that's not what's important to us. What's important is reporting it accurately and getting it to our subscribers first.
Definitely. Like I said, guys, go sign up before April 25th. Don't pay until August 1st. It's worth it. You get a lot of perks in there with the premium content and just a lot of insight and stuff, little scoops as well for what we do in terms of football and basketball recruiting and obviously covering the program. So I think that's enough right there. Let's dive into this one, man. We're going to, like I said earlier, focus on the defensive line in this one. We've had 2 open practices so far. We also got to see, along with the open practice last Saturday, we also got to see a scrimmage as well. I think it's the first scrimmage they've had this spring. Wasn't quite full contact, but, it was good to see some guys hitting each other at times, and was definitely kind of fun to see the rotations and how things are shaking out. But I think the biggest thing I've learned from this defensive line and, watching them, covering them this spring, talking to the coaches and some of the players as well, is a lot of bodies in there, man. It's a lot bigger of a group now. It looks more like a group now that is ready to compete, at that Power 5, top 25 level. I think, when kind of Mac Brown first came in, it was a thin group that had some really talented guys, Jason Strobridge, Aaron Crawford, but overall behind those guys wasn't a lot of depth. Mac Brown's been able to bring in some depth on that line. Still a lot of young guys, still a lot to prove on that position as a whole, but when you look at some of the returners in terms of Tamari Fox, Reva Hossack, Jaleel Taylor, even guys like Clyde Pender and Miles Murphy, Christian Varner, Kevin Hester got chances to play last year as well. So I think that D-line group right now, it's got bodies. Now, how it goes into the season, how it plays in the season is kind of to be determined, because there's still a lot to prove with some of that youth. But overall, I think they're feeling a lot better about that position than they were, say 2 seasons ago, if you will.
Well, a couple of years ago, when Tim Cross called the defensive lineman over and said, okay, guys, huddle up, let's talk. Aaron Crawford ran over, Jason Strobridge ran over, and then he had some young guys by the name of Tamari Fox and Jaleel Taylor run over. And then Ray Bahasic was sort of figuring things out, and the JC transfer. It wasn't a big group, and it wasn't a group where he could look around and say, well, I can use this guy in this situation, I can use that guy in that situation. I think one of the great benefits now when you look at the defensive line, and we spent a lot of time watching them here during the scrimmage and even during practice, the drills before the scrimmage, which was April 10th, is that they, first, like you said, they have numbers. You and I were talking, we were just kind of rounding the names off before we hit record. You could go 10 names of guys that individually isolated, if you look at them in practice, you say, wow, that guy's impressive.
Yeah.
You're going down to the Christian Varners and Kevin Hesters of the world, the guys that maybe didn't have the great name recognition coming in. They weren't as valued, but they're certainly growing into the role and certainly looked the part now. And I think that a guy like Hester is going to get a chance to get on the field this year for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But then you also have the younger ones, Murphy and Pinder from last year. And then you have the newcomers, Silver and Ritzy. these guys look like major Power 5 college football players at the line of scrimmage. I'm not sure you could have said that when they dipped into the bench after Strobridge and Crawford. Before Strobridge and Crawford were fantastic.
Oh,
Strobridge made himself an NFL player. Crawford is sort of a fringe NFL player, and I think that without the injury he had the year before, I think he would absolutely be a lock and an established player in the league. So, but outside of that, Jaleel Taylor was flipped from App State. They had to get a guy in, so they were able to flip him from App State. He's a little undersized, but he's a little bit of a plug there in the middle, giving him some decent reps. But you saw last year when the younger guys started coming on, his reps kind of diminished. So he's a nice guy to have in that room, but he's the 8th or 9th guy in that room, which is fine because if you can go that deep and have a guy like Jaleel Taylor there, Jacob,
doing pretty good.
They're in really good shape. So the thing I like about this room is that it's deep. It's deep with talent. So a lot of high-end potential guys, which means, hey, 6 months from now, one of these dudes that maybe you don't expect to explode and end up getting 35 snaps a game could be a guy who does. And it's not because the other guys aren't developing at the right rate. It's because he just explodes, because that does happen when guys get to school. So they have a lot of players that are capable of doing that explosion, capable of just erupting and becoming a 40-snap guy by November. Even the 2 freshmen, I think Javar Ritzy, if you want to ask me who the most impressive of these young guys is Silver's enormously impressive. Watching Javar Ritzy in the scrimmage, he's low, comes off the ball low, he's got good pad levels, he's got good technique. And then when he gets off the lineman, he got to the ball carrier quickly and slowed momentum a lot. So he looks like he's ready to play. So I think of all the groups in this team, the one that they have improved the most since this staff got here to North Carolina is the defensive line. A lot of dudes, and we're going to hit on some of these guys moving ahead here in this podcast. But if you're going to talk about the group, you have to list off 5 or 6 things, because that is how impressive a job they have done building that unit.
Yeah, I think Mac's done a really good job, and the coaching staff, I shouldn't just say Mac, has done a really good job of kind of building that group up from the ground up in a lot of ways. Like you said, when you just look at who they had when they came in. And let's focus on some of the younger guys real quick, because I think we'll talk about the guys that came in this year. You mentioned Ritzy and Silver, and I'm also I'm going to throw Kedrick Bingley Jones into that mix as well, because he's not a guy he was a guy that was out with injury all last season, but was talked up a lot. His name kind of was continuously mentioned by a lot of the coaching staff, and in the off season and even during the season at times as well. So I'm going to kind of group him in there with that group as well. But I do agree with Ritzy being the most impressive. I think Silver's the biggest. Now, I don't know what the deal quite is with Silver, and this is why I'm saying this. I know the last open practice we had, he had some ankle issues and was kind of limited in that practice. And then the last practice we were at on April 10th, which during the scrimmage as well, I remember shooting the O-line and D-line, which I'll throw some footage in there right now, when they were kind of doing I think it was like 2v3 drills or 1v2 drills going at each other. Silver had his helmet off and was kind of watching. I don't remember him taking any reps, so I don't know if he's still a little limited right now, because I just haven't been as impressed with him and haven't seen him take as many reps as I've seen a guy like Javar Ritzy take. To me, he's the most impressive out of those, I'm going to say 3 guys, because like I said, I'm throwing Bingley Jones into the mix. Just looks the part, man. I mean, you talked about Silver being big. I mean, Ritzy's a big guy too, and I was able to see him at a Rivals camp a couple of years ago, and he has put on a ton of weight since then. So I think you're really set with the upside of Silver and Ritzy. I think those are going to be guys that are going to be really, really, maybe not this year as much. I think you'll see them play a lot, but going into the future as they get older, I think those are going to be guys that are really, really elite defensive linemen. And I'm really interested to see what Kedrick Bingley Jones has as well, because like I said, he's a guy that's been talked up a lot, but he's also a guy that we just have not seen a lot of. I mean, with him missing all of last season. So really intrigued to see how those guys can come on. And like I mentioned, we'll talk about some of the returning guys here after this, but what are your thoughts on kind of those 3 guys in particular? Because like I said, I've been a little bit more impressed with Ritzy than I have with some of the other guys, but I'm not quite sure how healthy Silver is, for lack of a better word, just with that ankle. I think it might be still bothering him a little bit.
Well, it was his 8th practice.
Yeah, he's young too. Yeah,
and he's got to learn. The fact that Ritzy was so impressive at his 8th practice really stands out. But they're watching Kedrick Bendy Jones as well without having a lot of prior stuff to go on because he missed so much of last year.
He did, yeah.
He got injured in the summer. So, there was no spring. He was an early enrollee, but there was no spring practice. Everything hit before they started their spring practice. They missed it all. So they're watching him. He's huge too.
Yeah.
In fact, you took a photo the other day and you sent us. Dina sent it to me. She says, I'm channeling my inner Dina here, Miss King.
Love that.
Look at how big he is, Andrew. He's huge. He is. He's enormous.
He is,
And he was extremely talented coming out of high school. They were raving about the work he was doing before everything hit. And then, of course, he had the injury in the summer. They have high expectations from him, but they're not going to rush him along because of the injury. He'll have opportunities. So I do think someone to keep an eye on that maybe a lot of people aren't wowed about right now is him, because everyone's talking about Ritzy and Silver, and they're talking about Murphy especially, and also Pinder, because they saw pretty nice glimpses of them a year ago, Murphy as well especially. And kind of forgotten is Bingley Jones, but I think that he's a guy that in time could be one of the anchors of the line. His talent level, his potential is that high. As far as Ritzy and Silver go, Silver looks like he's a guy that's going to be really good. Remember, we saw him in his 8th practice. So we saw his 5th practice and his 8th practice, I think is what it was. It was 3rd practice and his 8th practice. So he's just a pup, man. He's just trying to figure things out. I mean, he probably just now is figuring out the routine. That's fine, because that's the beauty of guys enrolling early. They have such a head start on the guys that show up in the summertime. It used to be 20 years ago, nobody enrolled early. No. So freshmen would show up at the end of July. They'd have a couple of days where they'd be freshman days, and then the regular returning guys would come back, and boom, they were thrown to the wolves. And that's why so many kids redshirted, because they would go through in August and September what these kids are going through now. So they're going to be so much further ahead. The weight training, getting adapted to the physicality of it. And they were pretty physical with some stuff on Saturday. And the speed of the game. And just, like with Drake May, when he threw that interception, the key there was how quickly Day Hollins broke on the ball and got the pick. So he's experiencing that now, and he has it on film. They'll have it all off season. Same with these big guys. So thoroughly impressed with Ritzy because he played a lot and he did well. Still impressed with Silver because we know what kind of athlete he is. And he's working through whatever he's working through. That happens, man. In football, if you're not getting banged up, means you're not playing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So these guys have to go through those experiences, and that's the beautiful thing about the spring. So I know you want to talk about a few other guys in the group, but specifically to those 3, I don't think Carolina's had 3 guys that are in the same, and they're not in the same recruiting class, but now they're in the same class because Bendy Jones didn't play last year. I don't know if they've ever had 3 defensive linemen in the same football class. Yeah. They're all freshmen now. Like I said about Bingley Jones, he was a different recruiting class, but they're the same football class at any time ever in the program's history. Those guys are really, really talented.
Yeah, really talented. I agree with that, AJ. I'm really interested to see how those guys, not only what they bring to the table this year, but how they continue to develop, because I don't think there's any doubt that you're going to see those 3 guys getting snaps and playing a decent amount this season. Let's talk about some of the other younger guys, I guess I should say, some of the guys that ended up getting a lot of reps last season, especially after that Wake Forest game and beyond. Clyde Pender, mentioned him, Miles Murphy, Christian Varner, Kevin Hester. I was able to, like I mentioned, with some of those 1v1s right before the scrimmage on Saturday, was able to kind of watch Pender and Murphy especially go at it. Pender had some really good moves to get to the dummy quarterback, if you can call it that. And I was really impressed with what I saw from Miles Murphy as well. And I think Christian Varner and Kevin Hester are guys that, they almost get grouped into the same thing for me, because when I see all 4 of these guys play, I'm just impressed with him. There's nothing, I don't really look at anybody and say, you can kind of tell he's a little bit less than him. I think maybe Murphy and Pender impress me the most, but the drop off between those 2 guys and the other 2 guys is very small. So I think with that group, the experience that they got last season was just so valuable. They played well when they came into, like I said, that second half of that Wake Forest game and beyond is when we really started to see a lot of those young D linemen play. And the defense got better because of that. So my thing really going into this season is, all right, how does the rotation kind of shake out? Because you've got some older guys in there as well. But what kind of impact, what kind of strides, how much better are they now? And will they be because of a spring that they have now that they didn't have last year? how much better are they going to be, come Friday night in Blacksburg here in the next few, when football season starts? How much better are those guys going to be than what they were not only this time last year, because, it leaps and bounds better, but when, after that Orange Bowl lost, what kind of improvements are these four guys are going to have made? Because if you can get those guys to take significant strides and be a lot better than they were last year, even though they were pretty solid, that's just going to bode so much better for this defensive line. And I think a lot is kind of riding on how these guys shake out. Because like I said, if you can get really positive improvements from them, from what you've seen from them last year to now, that's going to make this defensive line so much better, because those four guys are really, in my opinion, there's not a ton of upperclassmen on this line. Those four guys are the ones that are really going to kind of set the standard for this D line now and moving forward, because they're just, a large majority of it, really, when you just look at the group as a whole.
Well, a lot better. Experience makes you better. You get game film. And you hear me talk about it all the time. And I love asking new kids about game film, because I'm a huge proponent of the game film, because the eye in the sky don't lie.
Yes.
A lot of kids will tell you that,
yeah.
But they can see. A coach can tell them you did this right or you did that wrong, but until they see it on film, then they get it. And so many lessons are learned through film, and they've had a ton of film of themselves to watch, not just in games, but now practicing. And as second-year guys, they're bigger, they're stronger, they should be a little bit quicker,
confident,
and they're smarter.
Too, probably.
And being smart helps you anticipate well. And if you anticipate well and you read things better, you're going to be a little bit quicker, because indecisiveness makes you slow.
Mm-hmm.
And they're shouldn't be as indecisive. I didn't watch them a ton in practice because I've seen them before, so I want to watch some of the other guys, but I did see enough that I really like Miles Murphy.
I did too.
Murphy last year Murphy, he was in the backfield every once in a while. I think he's quick. I think he's someone that could be a havoc wreaker on the line of scrimmage. Pinder is certainly a guy who can plug up gaps, and he can occupy blockers. And I think that's what they want from him. And so what you want to see from him this month is be better at gap control, things like that. He's already saw where he made mistakes in that last season, the opportunities he had to play. So he's focusing on stuff like that. And of course, being bigger and stronger and how to utilize your added strength. You don't just get big and strong and show up. You have to utilize it to your advantage. And that's one of the things that's so impressive about Ritzy is he's already strong, and he knows how to use that strength to just shed a blocker and get to the back quickly. That split second that you're able to do that quicker might be the difference between hitting him back before he gets to the line of scrimmage or missing him. And then the onus is on the linebacker to make a tackle himself. If you could slow it back, then the linebacker could close in, and that's where you would give up 2 and 3 yard runs instead of 5 and 6 yard runs. So those little split second differences is what they want to see from guys like Murphy and Pinder as they continue to progress. They're not at that point yet with the younger guys, because they're still learning stuff at a different scale right now than the slightly older guys. But these are two guys that, again, they're going to get on the field, they're going to play. I love the depth. Mac said a couple of weeks ago, he was very clear that the reason they lost to Notre Dame, the reason they lost Texas A&M, because they wore down. Mm-hmm. Where did they wear down the most? They wore down on the defensive line. They didn't have enough guys. They didn't have enough guys that were at the right kind of strength, because they were relying on some freshmen that didn't have the proper off-season training. That's not going to be a problem this coming season. So if you trim snaps from some guys and you spread them out to guys who are comparable in talent and comparable in effectiveness, you're fresher in the fourth quarter now as a result. So if you get an extra 10 snaps a game from Murphy and from Pinder than you did a year ago, and you're able to get some reps from Ritzy and from Silver and from Bendy Jones, and not as much, you don't have to rely on Vahasek playing 50 or 55 snaps. He's better at 35 than 55. You're a better team in the second half. You're a better team late in the first half. And by the way, late in the first half was a problem for this team last year as well. They gave up a lot of late scores at the end of the first half because they were getting tired again. Mm-hmm. They go in the locker room, get rejuvenated. They're strong again for a while, start to wear down in the fourth quarter. They're going to be a better football team simply because they have more dudes up front, and they're not going to be as tired up front. The high-end level, I'm not so sure. We'll hit on that here in a second in this podcast. Yeah,
definitely. Let's talk about some of the other guys, the older guys, I should say, to kind of wrap it up. Tamari Fox, Ray Vahasek, Jaleel Taylor already kind of been mentioned. I think Ray Vahasek's a guy that towards the end of last season as well, once he was kind of healthier, able to get in the weight room a little bit more consistently because of that shoulder injury he had a couple seasons ago. And when he, before he even transferred in, he's healthy now. So I think this year is going to really be, okay, what is Ray Bohasic? How good can he be? You already kind of know where you're getting at Tamari Fox. I think he's a great leader on that line. I've always enjoyed watching Tamari Fox play. I think he's a fun guy to watch, kind of wreaks havoc down there. And like I said, he's a very vocal, very animated guy on that line, kind of opposite of his brother Taman, who's not quite like that, especially if you talk kind of different contrasting personality, especially once you get him in a press conference room. But I think those two guys in particular are going to be, your mainstays, the guys that really are there to set the standard and make the biggest impact on this line just because they've played a lot of snaps at the college level and for UNC. And then you mentioned Jaleel Taylor. We'll see how he shapes up. And like you mentioned, once some of the younger guys came in last year, his minutes kind of went down and his reps kind of went down. But having a guy in that room that's been around as long as he has, and like you said, if he's your ninth guy, it's pretty good. You got to be feeling pretty good about that. But what are your thoughts on kind of those three, older guys, if you will?
Well, Tamari is not participating this spring. He's recovering, and he'll be. The expectation is he'll be fine, I guess, for next year. So that's allowed some other guys to get more reps. I think they were going to get him anyway. Mm-hmm. They're not giving the guys with a ton of experience a lot of work this spring because they have so many young guys. Mm-hmm. I think they said only 21 players on scholarship have actually been through a spring practice before. So they're getting a lot of those other kids' work. And even in the scrimmage we saw the other day, Bohasic didn't get a lot of reps.
No.
He didn't get off the field quick enough one time, and Mac had to call him out on that for a substitution violation. They know what they get with Bohasic. He should be stronger because he'll have a full year of weight training under his belt that he was unable to have when he first got there. So he should be stronger. And I think he's a really serviceable player, sometimes above serviceable if he's given him 35 snaps a game. He's been there, done that guy now after last season, and Tamari's the same way. Tamari's really athletic. Tamari's a guy that can line up at defensive end. He can line up pretty much anywhere in the line because he's super strong. The guys will tell you that he might be pound for pound the strongest dude on the team. So he can handle a lot of responsibilities, coming off the ball with a hand on the ground.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's a great value to have because you're talking about a lot of young guys otherwise. And you don't know how young guys are going to perform when the lights go on. Mm-hmm. And having a guy like Bohasic who knows what he's doing there, having a guy like Tamari Fox who's multidimensional there, who knows what he's doing, has played a lot of snaps, he's athletic, he can chase people down, but he's strong enough to handle the gaps. That's a huge foundation to start with. I don't think that either one of them are great college football players, but it's a nice way to start with your line. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that they will lead by example. The only thing about not having Tamari this spring is he's not out there leading by example on the field to show the younger guys. But I think Bohasic's done a nice job of that. The attitude that Jaleel Taylor brings to the table, a guy who played a decent amount as a freshman because they had to put him on the field. But as you said, kind of like maybe your ninth guy now, it's not a bad problem to have. Yeah. And he appears to be comfortable with that from what I know from afar. I don't have any inside information on that.
Definitely.
But I imagine they'll use him. He'll be a situational guy as well. That's the thing that's really, really fascinating about this line. Tim Cross has a lot of situational guys. I don't know if they have anybody that could give him 60 snaps a game right now and be an all-ACC player. I don't know if they have that at this moment.
Yeah,
I think they'll have all ACC guys down the road, but they're still young football players and they have to learn, and they're going to have to go out there and get their butt whipped in Blacksburg on a few snaps to learn, to figure out what they got to figure out. When the film room says, okay, well, you use your shoulder improperly wrong, you use your hands improperly on that play, and they'll have to learn from that. So the next thing I know you're going to go to is just the group as a whole, but I think because of that, there are question marks about how good this group can be collectively this year. Mm-hmm. Down the road, they're in great shape. Individually, there's a lot of talent there, but I'm not so sure yet about the group as a whole.
I agree. It's a perfect segue to what I wanted to ask you to wrap this one up is just what do you think the upside is for this D-line? Because when I look at it, I'm kind of 50-50 on it because I'm like, okay, a lot of talent, a lot of potential. And we've talked about this, and I think we talked about this in our Tape Talk series with – a wide receiver group is what it was. A lot of potential in there, but potential means nothing unless it's met. So I'm really kind of just 50-50 on what it can be. I think there's a lot of talent in there, and I think a year, maybe a year on from now, maybe 2 years on from now, really, really going to be confident in what this D-line is going to be once some of these younger guys have a lot more reps. It's kind of proven what they can do, not to mention some of the other recruits that they'll bring in on that D-line because, you got to be good in the trenches. So, I would expect that D-line position groups in terms of recruiting to be heavily targeted from, now until Mac's gone. But overall, what do you kind of see as the upside? Because like I said, I think I'm kind of 50-50 on it right now. If I don't know, it might be a cop out.
Still guys in college are going to be ready quicker. The line of scrimmage, the trenches, both sides of the ball, takes longer for those guys to get ready.
Definitely.
But nothing else is because of the physical aspect. Yeah. They're not ready physically. And then they have to get used to the beautiful thing about playing in the line of scrimmage, especially offensive line, is you're going to have contact on every snap.
Yep.
But the contact you have in college is totally different than the contact you have in high school. I remember talking to Jalen Dalton's coach when he was a senior in high school. I went out to his school and did a piece with him, talked to his coach for a while. I said, so what's your biggest concern about Jalen? He said, well, Jalen's never had to beat a guy.
Mm-hmm.
He just throws him around and makes a play. So he's going to have to go to college and learn how to beat a blocker. And that's what was so impressive about Ritzy. Ritzy was beating the offensive tackle during that scrimmage. But that's one of the hardest things for kids to learn how to do when they get to college. You have to have the right quickness, you have to have the right strength, you have to have the right technique, and you have to have the grind mindset to beat them and then make a play. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that goes into it that they're not asked to do in high school because they're just throwing everybody all over the field. So because of that, I'm not really sure what the high end is for this group. I think down the road, as you alluded to, this is going to be a really good defensive line. But right now, it might be a situation where there might not be a great difference between the first guy and the seventh guy. Theoretically, you say that's great. But if the first, second, and third guys are not great, then your line is always going to be good, but maybe never really great. Maybe it be great in stretches, but over the long haul might not be. So that's my question is how good when they go up against the better teams on the schedule, when they go to South Bend, when they host Miami, a club like NC State has always been physical with the run, and they have a chance to be a good team this year. When they go to Carter-Finley Stadium, what level can the defensive line raise its game? Mm-hmm. If they're always here, and if always here is perfectly fine against 7 or 8 teams on the schedule, and they look great and they rack up really good numbers, okay. But it's those games up here that in order to be a champion, you have to raise your level and rack up the same numbers against the better run teams, against the teams that are just better offensively overall. So can they do that? Will they do that? I think that's the question. They're going to be good enough to win a lot of games.
Oh, yeah.
Are they good enough to help the team meet what is their stated mission? And that's to get to the ACC championship game. And I think a lot of people over there think they have a chance to get to the CFP. I think a lot of people that cover them think they have a chance to get to the CFP. But is the defensive line good enough to get them there? I can't answer it yes or no because I have no clue. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of parts. They have a lot of really nice parts. But collectively, what will those parts be producing when they get into November? That will determine, I think, how far this team goes, how high they are up in the rankings when this thing is all said and done.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's to be determined. Like I said, until the whistle's blown, until the games actually start. Just hard to know, like I said, especially when you got a group that overall is just as young as this one is. I mean, you've got what? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 7 underclassmen basically in that we've talked about. Very few upperclassmen. So a lot of potential. I think it's going to be one that's really good down the line. But how great will it be this year? Will it be CFP level? We'll see. We'll have to see how things shape up. But I think it's a good place to wrap this one up, AJ. Like I said, guys, we did the offensive tape talk series, rolled that out over the past couple weeks. Make sure you guys go check that out if you haven't. We have 4 different ones over there, and we'll obviously be doing 4 different ones on the defense starting first here with the defensive line. And as a quick reminder, sign up before April 25th on our site, TarHeelIllustrated.com. Just click the link in the description below after the video is done. You'll see a link in there. Don't pay until August 1st. So definitely take advantage of that opportunity when you can as well. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. As always, guys, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one. Thanks.